There's a question many Catholics ask, but rarely get a complete answer to. Why has the Church insisted for so many centuries on a prayer that seems like simple repetition of Hail Marys? If you've ever prayed the Rosary without knowing exactly the spiritual weight of what you were doing, this video will change that. These aren't generic reasons. They are 5 concrete reasons, grounded in church history, in the teachings of the popes, and in Our Lady's own words. And the 5th reason is the most decisive of all. Because it doesn't speak about your life now, it speaks about the moment when everything else will stop mattering. Before we continue, if this channel exists to deepen your faith every day, subscribe now. It's free and takes 2 seconds. And if you already pray the Rosary or are about to start after this video, leave a like. It helps more Catholics find this content and strengthens this space of faith. Now let's get to the first reason. The first reason is this. The Rosary isn't just a repetitive prayer. It's a spiritual weapon the Church has used for centuries against the soul's greatest battles. According to Church tradition, this prayer was given by Our Lady to Saint Dominic at precisely a moment of crisis, when the faith seemed lost in the face of heresies spreading like wildfire across Europe. The Catholic world of that time faced a real threat of doctrinal dissolution, and it was in that context that the Rosary emerged, not as decorative devotion, but as a direct response to a concrete attack against the faith. And here's the point few Catholics stop to consider. Nearly 1,000 years later, this weapon remains just as powerful as it was back then. Why? Because the battles have changed shape, but their origin remains the same. The enemy that wants to draw man away from God hasn't disappeared. He simply changed strategy. Today, it's no longer organized heresies with names and councils convened to combat them. Today, it's distraction, relativism, religious indifference, the constant anxiety that prevents the silence necessary for prayer. The spiritual war hasn't stopped. It's just become quieter. And that's exactly why every Catholic who prays the Rosary daily reports the same thing. A peace that isn't of this world, and a protection they can't explain but can feel. It isn't a vague sensation. It's the concrete effect of a prayer that the Church itself recognizes as powerful enough to be called, by various popes throughout history, a weapon against evil. St. Pius V, for example, attributed to the Rosary a decisive role in the victory at Lepanto in 1571, when Christendom faced an existential threat. It was no coincidence that the Church instituted shortly after the feast of Our Lady of the Rosary. It was official recognition that that prayer had changed the course of history. If that already seems significant, what comes next goes beyond protection. Because the Rosary doesn't just protect those who pray it, it transforms them. The second reason goes far beyond spiritual protection. It transforms whoever prays it. This happens because, in contemplating the joyful, sorrowful, glorious, and luminous mysteries, you aren't just repeating words, you are reliving the entire life of Jesus Christ, from birth to resurrection. Each decade isn't a block of mechanical repetition. It's a window into a concrete episode in the Lord's life. The Annunciation, the Visitation, the agony in the garden, the scourging, the crucifixion, the resurrection, the ascension. In a few minutes of prayer, the Catholic travels through the entire economy of salvation. And it's impossible to meditate every day on the Passion of Christ and remain the same proud, anxious, or resentful person. Think about it. How can someone hold on to resentment against their neighbor while meditating, in the 5th decade of the sorrowful mysteries, on the crucifixion of a God who forgave even his own executioners? How can someone keep their anxiety at the same level after contemplating over and over Christ's total surrender to the Father's will in the Garden of Olives? Constant meditation gradually wears down the resistances of pride. Little by little, without realizing it, the Catholic who prays the Rosary begins to think as Christ thought, to forgive as he forgave, and to face suffering with the same serenity he had on Calvary. This isn't spiritual exaggeration. It's what the doctors of the Church themselves described as the natural effect of continuous meditation on the life of Christ. Saint Louis Marie Grignon de Montfort, one of the great apostles of the Rosary, insisted that this prayer, when prayed with attention to the mysteries, produces a true conformation of the soul to Jesus Christ. It isn't about memorizing prayers. It's about letting the life of Christ, meditated on repeatedly, reshape the way you react to the world. But there's something even more striking than this personal transformation. Because the Rosary wasn't just recommended by the Church throughout the centuries, it was directly requested by the very Mother of God in one of the most well-documented apparitions in modern history. And if that already seems extraordinary, the third reason is even more striking: the promises the Mother of God herself made to those who pray the Rosary faithfully. At Fatima, in 1917, Our Lady was clear in saying that the Rosary was the solution for wars, for crises, and for the conversion of sinners, a request repeated in nearly all 6 of her apparitions to the 3 little shepherds. It wasn't an isolated request, made once and then forgotten. It was an insistence, month after month, from May to October of that year. The same central message returned: pray the Rosary. And here's the detail many Catholics overlook. She didn't ask for great sacrifices or impossible pilgrimages. She didn't demand extreme fasting or heroic promises beyond the reach of the ordinary faithful. She simply asked that we pray it every day, a practice accessible to anyone, in any life circumstance, at any spiritual stage. That alone reveals something about the nature of this prayer. It isn't reserved for religious or spiritually advanced souls. It's a weapon placed in the hands of every baptized person, without exception. And when the Mother of God insists so many times on the same practice, it reveals just how decisive this prayer is for the salvation of those who pray it and those remembered in it. The Fatima apparitions occurred in the midst of the First World War, a period of destruction on a scale Europe had never seen. And it's precisely in this scenario of collapse that Our Lady chooses to insist on a simple, daily practice within reach of any family. This was no historical coincidence. It was a direct call to the spiritual root of the conflicts devastating the world. But this dimension of salvation, far from being limited to the one praying, extends into the home as well. And that brings us to the fourth reason, and it's precisely this dimension of salvation extending beyond the individual that gives rise to the fourth reason. The whole family is reached. Families who pray the Rosary together report something in common: fewer fights, more unity, and a peace that seems to protect the home from the inside out. This isn't a superficial psychological effect of family time. It's something deeper. When father, mother, and children gather daily to meditate on the same mysteries, there's a unity of intention that crosses the natural differences between generations. The child praying beside the grandfather, the teenager praying beside the mother, all turn toward the same center: the life of Christ and the intercession of Mary. This isn't coincidence. It's the direct fruit of the grace this prayer draws into the home. Pope Pius XII used to say that the family that prays together stays together, a phrase that became one of the most repeated mottos of Marian devotion in the 20th century, and one that carries a precise spiritual diagnosis. Family disunity doesn't arise only from differences in personality, but often from the absence of a shared spiritual center. And this makes even more sense when we understand that each Hail Mary prayed together is like a brick laid in that home's spiritual protection, forming a wall the outside world cannot tear down. Consider the amount of pressure a family faces today: unstable finances, screens that fragment attention, work schedules that scatter household members across different hours. In the face of this, a daily moment of shared prayer isn't just devotion. It's active resistance against the dispersion the world imposes on family life. But if the Rosary protects the family as it journeys through this life, there's still an effect that surpasses any earthly protection, because it reaches the most decisive instant of all. And it's precisely this protection built day after day that reveals the fifth and most decisive reason, the one that manifests at the most important moment of all human life: the hour of death. According to the promises attributed to Saint Dominic and reaffirmed by various saints throughout history, those faithful to the Rosary receive Our Lady's special assistance precisely at the passage into eternity. Stop and consider the weight of that. Of all life's moments, it is precisely in the last one, when the faithful has no more strength, no more time, no more chance to correct course, that this promise is fulfilled. This means that every Rosary prayed today is, in fact, being kept for that final instant, when nothing else will matter except the certainty of not being alone. Everything else, the achievements, the possessions, the worries that seem so urgent today, will lose all meaning before eternity. Only the soul before God will remain. And it's exactly in that moment that church tradition guarantees whoever was faithful to the Rosary will not face that passage without Mary's assistance. And that's why the saints insisted so much on this practice, because they knew it was, at the same time, light for the present and assurance for eternity. It isn't a devotion among others. It is, according to the understanding of generations of saints and popes, one of the surest practices for anyone who wishes to persevere in the faith to the end. So, if you've made it this far, the question is no longer, why pray the Rosary? The question is, why haven't you prayed it every day yet? 5 reasons have been presented: spiritual weapon, inner transformation, a direct request from the Mother of God, protection of the family, and assurance at the hour of death. No other devotion brings together at once so many dimensions of Christian life, from the daily spiritual struggle to the final breath. If this video clarified something you already felt but had never fully put into words, start today, not tomorrow, today.